Hey, it's Bernard Nomberg with another episode of NOMBERG LAW Live, and we're out and about at the Pizitz Food Hall, and I've got my buddy Christopher Goodman here. Good morning, Chris, or good evening, Chris.
Yeah, good evening to you, man. How you doing?
Good, I'm doing well, and I appreciate you giving me a few minutes today.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you having me.
Well, if you don't know Chris, you need to get to know Chris. You need to find him on social, and we'll put it all in the comments how to get in touch with him. Chris, I've known for several years now. We play basketball together at the Jewish Community Center here in Birmingham. He never seems to find me in the corner, but we always find him at the top of the key. He's got a great set shot. We could talk about that another day. Chris is in the community. Chris has a radio station I'm going to get him to tell us about that he is on, and they talk about all topics that are current, and that's what we're going to get into tonight. But before we get into those topics, Chris, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and what you're doing these days.
Okay. Well, I am Christopher Goodman. I am currently the co-host for the ConnectED radio show on 101.1 WXJC. We go live every Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Myself, I am the co-host, of course. The host is Kaya Wheeler. She is a young firecracker who is on fire and who is also trying to get in the community. And our show, ConnectED, is about educating. That's the ED at the end is a capital ED for a reason. And we're talking about educating and connecting the different voices from different communities, as well as touching or speaking to the young millennial mindsets. There's a lot of things that we see that are going on society-wise and in culture that we want to address, not just by looking at it from the media's perspective, but we want to narrow those conversations down to what you have going on at home, and even more so to each individual and what's going on in your heart and in your mind, making the right decisions in order to set yourself up to be successful, not only by yourself, but within your community. So,
and I've listened, Chris, I've listened to several of your Saturday evening shows, and not only can you listen to it on the radio, but I know that you guys live cast it on Facebook or maybe Instagram as well.
Yes, both.
Excuse me. And the perspective that you bring, you're right, it's not just from what you read in the media, but I want you to tell the folks a little bit about your perspective. Where are you coming from? Tell us about your background.
Okay, so I was born in California. I stayed out there for probably about 5 or 6 years. And then I've also lived in Virginia. I lived up there for probably about 3 years. I was in New Jersey for about maybe half a year, about 9 months or so. And then I finally moved. I touched a little bit of Florida, and then I came down here to Alabama. So I've kind of gotten a taste of quite a few states in the United States. Yeah. And so that's kind of where my perspective comes from. I've got to see a lot of different cultures, even within the states of the United States. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But for the most part, I grew up down here.
And you went to high school in Birmingham, didn't you?
I did. I went to Clay Chalkville, go Cougars. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I've grown up on the east side of Birmingham, but I have and always have kind of hung out with a little bit of anybody, you know.
And that's evident when I observe you and interact with you on the basketball court. You get along with everybody until somebody pushes a button and needs to be set straight, but for a good reason, and I love it. I love you for that. But lately, we've had some real national, unfortunately, we've had some real national news for something that some teenagers did that was quite stupid of them around March 4th or so. And I know you guys recently touched on it on your show this past week. I'm currently writing a blog article that'll come out later this week about it, but of course we're talking about the Spain Park, the Hoover kids who put on Twitter about a 45 to 50 second video, and it was just filled with hate speech.
Right.
And it just, I know it infuriated you, it infuriated me, and they just had some idiotic statements that they had to say. But before we really dig into this, what really struck me was that this didn't just come off the top of their head.
Right.
To me, this was taught in the home.
Right.
This was taught amongst their friends, or acceptable speech. Did you see the video I'm talking about?
Yes, I have seen the video.
And what was your initial impression? I think I know, but tell us.
At this point, I mean, when you see stuff like this, you really just continue to scratch your head. I mean, you think, of course, I've never thought that we've just gotten past that point. But I mean, when you see this stuff and it's still prevalent and as strong as it was in that video, you just scratch your head and you wonder, like, will this ever not be a conversation?
Yeah.
I think instead of like, usually my initial emotion in these type of situations would probably be to get upset, but I think after seeing this one, I was a little bit more heartbroken than anything, because I mean, down at that level, I mean, my sister graduated from Clay Chalker High School just a few years back, and I'm just thinking, you know, what if my sister had experienced or been around people like this while she was at school? Now, my sister is a pretty sweet, not very aggressive person, but just to think that maybe at some point in time during the day, she interacted with someone like this.
Sure. Sure.
So that was kind of a heartbreaking thought for me. And then I'm also thinking about those kids, like, nobody sent them, at least at this point, it doesn't look like anybody has sent them in the right direction, at least as far as concerning the issues or the things that they were discussing. So I think I was a little bit more heartbroken. I was a little bit upset, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I think that we see now that there's still work to be done in the hearts of our teenagers and adults and everybody here.
You know, in today's times, modern technology, everybody has a phone, so everybody can be a publisher, and typically, unfortunately, they put out stuff before they think, just like this video. And maybe it's a good thing this video did come out. And I don't know if you saw this, but I saw some statistics. This video has been viewed over 2.5 million times in the first 10 days, probably much more than that. It made the New York Post, it made the Washington Post, it's made national news, it made local news, of course. It's impacted local businesses, where there was a protest this past week at the Hoover Toyota, a dealership where I think the father either worked or owns the dealership of the young girl who's on the video. I don't think that either they don't care or the young people just don't think before they speak. And I want to know, what kind of education are they getting? What kind of what is being taught in their home? And even if you think that, why say it? Because all it's meant to do is inflame those around you. You played sports in high school just like I did. My experience was a lot of these things, the athletes are kind of immune to it for the most part, not always, but kind of, I never saw a lot of this. I know it went on, but it may be because I played sports and I just overlooked it, or it overlooked me. I don't know how your experience was being an athlete in high school, but I don't know if you were subjected to these kind of things.
I wouldn't say in high school I definitely wasn't subjected to this. I believe that it was present, but during the art of playing sports, you really don't think much about it. A lot of times the coaches are always preaching to one another about some sense of brotherhood or connection to the person next to you. You're playing for the person next to you. You're fighting with the person next to you. You're practicing for the art of perfection with the person next to you. And usually you look around during the random times that he gives that speech, he or she or whoever gives that speech, and you look around and it's like, well, there's a conglomerate of different types of people sitting in the locker room with you. And so a lot of times during sports, no. But I mean, can we say that things like this are present? Absolutely. Sure. I don't think, well, maybe, I think there were maybe 1 or 2 times where I may have been subjected to it, but not in sports.
Yeah. For me, sports seems to be, and this is not a blanket statement, but just my observation, a lot of times sports kind of smooths through a lot of those things, because like you were saying, you've got a coach who, for example, in basketball, he wants the 5 best players on the court. He's not going to care. He just wants to know who can produce. You could be white, black, Indian, Asian, doesn't matter what you are. If you could put the ball in the bucket or play defense, you're going to be on the court. And those other 4 guys on the court with you, they don't care either, as long as you're helping them to win, because that's the ultimate goal. And a lot of times you'll see, whether it's high school, junior high, college, sometimes the athletes are kind of put out there to help smooth over tensions. And I know it doesn't happen all the time, and we could talk about this from now until whenever my battery runs out on my phone. We'll never solve the problems, but I just hope there's more education. I hope there's more teaching. I hope that this is a lesson that not just these kids on the video learn, but all of the people who have read it, have watched it, or are subjected to it. I'm glad it's creating more conversation.
Yes. I mean, I'm definitely glad it's creating more conversation. But I think more than just, there has to be an intentional curriculum when it comes to how we're going to educate from here. I think when you're trying to address a certain issue, you can't just talk broadly. And more so than anything, I think that considering that, I mean, on tomorrow I'm supposed to be going to visit the Civil Rights Institute. I believe that a lot of what Dr. King was preaching about was he wanted to see the change, but I think what may have lacked in the process is that to see the complete heart change for the blanket of people who he was trying to address, no matter who you were. And I think that was the difficulty of such a large or a mass movement, is that oftentimes, you know, you would talk about what you wanted to happen, and you may be able to give the A, B, C, D, E, F, G steps, but a lot of times it's difficult to break up what's going in the heart and then replant things that need to start coming out in order to see a change society. And so, I mean, we have to be very direct in what we're going to be teaching these kids from here and how we're going to carry out any type of discipline.
You brought up such a great point, going to the Civil Rights Institute. We're so fortunate and lucky to have that institute here in Birmingham. I'm sure it was put here because of the horrible things that went on during the Civil Rights era.
Right.
But later this month, on a somewhat related note, I'm going to be speaking at one of the local high schools to the student athletes at that school about the dangers of social media, how there are such real consequences like what we're dealing with here, potentially in this Hoover Spain Park case, but also using social media for good. The J.J. Watts of the world have done so many wonderful things through social media.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can pivot from here because I know you and I could talk about it quite a bit. I want to talk more about the radio show. I want to talk about who are some of your guests and your topics. What's coming up for the show?
What's coming up for the show, is funny that you asked that, is that next week, because of course it's international, well, it's Women's Month, we're supposed to be celebrating women and all that they've been doing and all they're going to be doing as far as the future is concerned. But next week we're supposed to have a blended show, and instead of me being on there, we're going to let the girl the woman who's previously on right before us, Sylvia Rogers, her and Kaya are going to have the blended show, and they'll be talking about and talking to the women and women alone. So it should be it will be great. So I think they're going to be cranking that up. They're going to take the full hour together. So instead of starting at 6:30, they'll start at 6, finish up at 7, and they'll be talking to the women only. So if you are a lady doing anything in the world, if you're a high schooler, you're in college, you're a professional out there, be sure to tune in 101.1 WXJC at 6 o'clock on Saturday, because it should be a good one.
And we'll make sure we put in the comment section to this video all of the contact information about the radio show, how to get in touch with Chris, and as well as for the station. And if you're just joining us, thank you for tuning in. I'm talking to my buddy Christopher Goodman. Chris is a good guy, he's a good fella, shoots a hell of a three-point shot from the top of the key, plays tenacious defense, but is more importantly, Chris has got his finger on the pulse of what's going on in our Birmingham area and is what's going on in current news nationally. And he gets on Saturday evenings. If you haven't seen his show, you really need to tune in, either call in, listen in, or chime in through Facebook or Instagram Live. Just find Chris or find the station and you'll find the show 6:30 on Saturday. Chris, talk to me, what in the last several episodes, what's been one of your favorite topics or your favorite guests and why?
We recently, this past Saturday, we had Brian Peoples, who also has his own show on 101.1, and we discussed there just Kaya wanted to discuss more about like what guys think of women, and then what are like ladylike characteristics and what we like in women. So that one was pretty fun because Brian is a highly intelligent guy, and it was just fun to have him in general. So I mean, that was one of my favorites. And then
sounds like he was getting set up there by those questions, but I hope he waded the waters the right way.
We both were very careful in approaching those questions and what we said. I mean, because at any point in time, you get a fluctuation of callers. No, that's not cool. So that one was one of my favorites. Of course, that was last week. But I mean, anytime we talk about these issues, I'm always excited on Saturdays. I mean, we talked about the R. Kelly situation and what should happen and the follow through with all of that. We also talked about the Jussie Smollett situation. but like I get excited about these things because we get to talk about the heart of them. We try to bring it home for you to where, you know, the young millennial minds, though they see it in the media, they can then break it down and they can digest it for themselves. And so for me, that's what's exciting every single week, because I mean, with Jussie Smollett, you're like, well, making a decision on whether or not you're gonna lie about something. Or with the R. Kelly, like being very careful and sensitive to not only the law, but just being a decent human being in general. You know what I'm saying? Like we're talking about things that I don't think I've heard themes about it since the 90s. I remember in the 90s, my parents always were preaching things to us on every commercial or every show. It was some type of family show, family oriented, where there were principles or themes that were connected to not only taking care of one another, but being a responsible individual for yourself. And so ConnectED gets me excited every Saturday because we always get to dive in on topics where we can single it out, stretch it, and help people look at it in a different way for themselves, maybe even change some people's direction. So we have a lot of things, well, we're planning a lot of things in the upcoming months that if we follow through with them, it will be an exciting time.
That's good. That's good. But you know, one of the things that shows like yours, shows like mine, and a lot of the media, not that I'm in the media at all, but it's too easy to focus on stories that bring out the bad things that people have done, because that's the easy topics to talk about. And we've just brought up three. I want to, and this is one of the things that I'm focusing on for 2019 on my weekly show, is to try to bring up the good in people as well, because I want to be able to spotlight folks like you, because you're doing some great things in our community. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting right here. I'd say it if you weren't here. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on. But I want to focus, I want to see, and I know we got to talk about the bad stuff because it's important. It's very important. But I want to see some more focus on the good stuff that people do. I know that Chance the Rapper, for example, is a huge philanthropist in the Chicago area and has done some wonderful things. But I haven't heard anything in the last 2 or 3 years about what he's done since, and maybe not much, but I want to see the next stories, how he's affected all of these people with all his philanthropy. You know, things like that really get me excited too.
Have you heard about Jaden Smith?
I think. Talk to us.
Jaden Smith, he has his own foundation, of course.
Most folks don't know who Jaden Smith is.
Jaden Smith is Will Smith's son. All right, so he raps, but he also does a lot of philanthropy.
And he's about how old now? Is he a teenager?
Maybe about, I'll probably say maybe 17 to 20.
Okay.
So, but the guy he's doing some great work. His foundation, they just did what they call water box, and so they've taken water into Flint, Michigan. They had, from what the pictures were showing and what the article that I read was saying, is that his foundation has intentionally taken like a ton of water to the people, and so they were posting pictures, and the article kind of expounded on like how he set that up and maybe how long they were going to be there, which I can't say I grasped that during that time, but I mean he's doing great work.
Well, that's for such a young person with both of his parents being in the spotlight for so many years. They apparently have taught this kid pretty well, and I'm so happy. I mean, that's a great story, and I'm going to follow up myself and read more about it. Next time I'm online, I'll be able to share some more. But that's the kind of stuff that I also like to read about, and it gives me hope that not all is lost in current society. But at least it's programs like yours and it's shows like this that are able to talk about these issues. Chris, we're getting close toward the end of our interview, and I appreciate your time, particularly on a Monday night. I know you've been in class and got more stuff to do tonight. We'll post this at our regular time tomorrow at 10, Tuesday at 10. But I want to close with, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I want you to share with the folks in the Birmingham metro area some of the places that you like, you see some of the things that are going on that really excite you in the community, and then some other areas that maybe you want to see some more advancement going on. Just anything top of mind.
I've been watching the Birmingham Legion quite a bit. I've also been watching the Birmingham Iron. Of course, everybody has been watching UAB. I'm loving all of the expansion that's going on. Of course, they're about to get ready to start on the stadium up there, not too far past Caraway. I'm really enjoying I'm really enjoying the success of the high schools in Birmingham, their sports teams, especially basketball here recently. They really blew it out of the water, from Carver's girls going to the Final Four to Center Point and Winona and all of these schools. I mean, even not just the sports.
Right.
I mean, there was also an improvement in the curriculum and the teaching that was going on because their test scores have increased. You know,
and that's what's so vitally important, particularly in our downtown footprint. It's easy to, when you go over the mountain, to see the good scores and all of that, but I love seeing revitalization of not only the structures downtown, but the school systems improving, and those are all positive things. I really like those as well. Chris, I can't thank you enough, bud. I appreciate you showing up. That's just, Chris is my buddy, and I'll get him to pass it to me every once in a while. He gets on me. I don't play good D sometimes, but chasing these young guys around, it's tough. But anyway, that's enough for now. Pardon my cough. Guys, thank you again for NOMBERG Law Live. Whenever you tune in, whether it's live or on our replays, we come to you every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. We'll put all of Chris's contact stuff in the comment section. We'll catch you another time. Take care.